Oh God,
We're recording.
experimentation. Okay, I can start speaking.
Nope, not yet.
Okay, I bet. What's your signal when you're ready to?
Oops, hold on. It's preparing for us.
So are you going to wave at me when you want me to start? I see you have a nice backdrop there because I'm sure you're not doing this outside.
No.
I usually use the Northern Light one, but I figured I'd put some of my other things up here. Actually, let's see if this helps at all. Oh yeah, giving a
Okay.
backdrop to some of the other things behind me.
Okay. Hopefully this will let us go live here. Give me 1 second though. Oops, that's not right. All right, let's try this. It says it's setting us up.
Okay.
I thought we already did that.
I'm looking to see if I can, I guess my computer audio probably isn't that good. I had asked it to go through the computer, but then I plugged. Let me just try one thing. If I do unplug this. And I plugged. Let me just try one thing.
I see we have some people online. So with us today we have Rene, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself. I see we have some people online. So with us today we have Rene, and he's going to. Rene, if you want to go ahead and start, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Can you hear me?
You're kind of muffled.
I have a problem with my sound system. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this.
No. Forgive us while we figure this out here.
Sorry. I don't know what I did.
I can't hear you.
Let me see.
I can't hear you.
I don't know what to do.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Do we need to start over?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Belawazi, Monjasidos Biwi Pakoligan, yeah. I don't know what to do.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. There's an overplay there. Did you hear that?
I did.
So I've stopped. Do you need to fix something or?
No, just go ahead and keep going. I think we should be okay now.
Okay. Delawizima Jasdoswiwi Pakoligania. That means my name is began with a drum, Datsi, and also Paul Rene Tamburro, which Tamburro, my last name, also means drum. But my Ndolongamak Awasasak, which means I'm from the half of the tribe that's Bear. They sometimes call that Bear Clan. And of the Abenaki people, which is short for the Wabanakik, which is the people of the Dawnland in the Northeast. So my artwork is very much trying to keep the expression of the traditional cultures of the Northeastern peoples, meaning those of the Maritimes in Canada, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Quebec, Canada, and that part of the world. So it's not as familiar to most people as the artwork from the Southwest. But one of the things I try to say with my artwork is that we are still here, and also here in all over this Turtle Island, North America, and also in the Northeast. So do you have some questions?
Um, what made you decide to start doing artwork?
Okay. My dad, when I was little, started taking me to powwows, and that's going back to the early 1960s. And the powwows that I went to, everybody had tremendous amount of artwork on them. We wear our art when we do traditional dancing and such. So early on, I was exposed to beadwork and feather work and silver work and other kinds of things. Then also my grandmother was a bead worker, and there were basket makers in a lot of the relatives. So I have a cousin, for instance, who does birch bark boxes. I don't know if you can see that there with the deer on it. Then some of our people did porcupine quill work, like in this box here. So what happened was after the powwow circuit, I got recruited to go into a forestry school. They said that us Indians made good firefighters. So I didn't want to get pushed out of a plane into a fire, I joke, because I couldn't tell which side of the fire line I'd be on. So I got excited when my opportunity came up to do an apprenticeship in silver work. But the silver work that we were doing was from a company that made all the flatware sets. So what we did was all the spoon dies and things like that to make silverware. And I had to learn how to chip out dies, but also to work directly on the silver itself. And for 1 year, they would only let me work in copper. And I gained a great appreciation for copper because it works exactly the same as sterling. So with the flatware sets we did, spoons, forks, etc., they kept having me do mostly floral work, which I can still do, and that's very much a part of our native tradition too. So like on this bracelet, actually I have that itemized for sale. This is a real large one though, and it's dogwoods and roses. So I got to learn how to do dogwoods and rose flowers real well. But then I wanted to, after the apprenticeship was over, the company did shut down, which is why I was the only apprentice. The company said it wasn't going to last. It was Toll Silversmiths in Newburyport, Massachusetts. So then I started taking my own traditional designs. And the first thing I wanted to do is because I used to make porcupine quill boxes, and I loved the starfish design of the Mi'kmaq people who were related to my people, to my family, and in the Northeast. This is one from the 1800s, but they did that uh, what we call the starfish Kejuet, which is there was a story of a star going into the Atlantic Ocean, and sort of like a meteorite, and then it became the starfish. So it's one of the symbols of our people on the Atlantic coast. So the first cuff design I made was this one here, where I took the Kejuet design and put it into, and other porcupine quill designs, and put that into silver. So I still wear one like that to remind me of my basket making tradition. As a matter of fact, even when I sell at powwows, if I have lots of silver and stuff like that out, I always have some baskets. So we're always a basket people. So I always make sure we got our black ash baskets and stuff, because I would feel strange if I didn't honor the fact that most of the, like at Odanak and Indian Island, at Penobscot and the Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, all the different reserves, pretty much all the houses were built by people who made baskets and made brooms too, made lots of different things. But the basket making tradition is how we survived in a culture that was changing all the time around us, so that basically with the racism that was involved, you couldn't get jobs a lot of the time unless it was in the lumber industry or the paper mills or things like that. So the women especially did lots of the baskets, the fancy ones. So I used that as the base for my thinking about my art. And I started with taking basket designs. I also had spent time when I was living in Connecticut. My dad moved around a bit. Um, with Harold Tanaquidgeon in Mohegan, Connecticut. And he got me involved in doing wood carving. So I started making, this is one I've made, is a crooked knife, wahognigan we call them. And they were patterned after the idea of a beaver tooth. The beaver teeth were curved. And so this is, we call it the only traditional Indian knife. And you cut towards yourself and you do wood carving with them. So I started incorporating the different types of basket designs into those too. So the same designs I then started putting into my silver and my copper work. The hearts represent going to when you die and go to heaven. We say it's the Milky Way, it's the footsteps, and so you pick strawberries along the way. So that's the heartberry. So I put those in my artwork to remind us of following our ancestors, and then I put the stars in there, and that's the path to our ancestors and to our future too. I mean, we think 7 generations past, but also 7 generations future. So these are the kinds of traditions I try to build on. And many of my pieces start with having a turtle right in the beginning. If you look at my artwork that's for sale, you'll see turtles a lot of the time. And because that's our continent, that's North America. Every turtle has 13 squares on its back. And that's how we say our months. That's our calendar. There's 13 moons in a year. And then you have the 28 days on the outside. And any turtle shell you see will have those 13. And so that reminds us to be looking at the sky and the earth, to have that balance. And if you look at a turtle, you'll see its tail is Mexico, and one leg is Florida, one leg's Baja California, the other is New England and the Gaspé, and then the other one, Alaska. Then I guess the head's heading into Hudson Bay. But that's our whole, Tolba Minahan, our whole, in our language, which means the turtle island. And so that's all often a centerpiece. Then as I introduced myself, I said, Ogawiso, or also the, when we say the bear for our people, uh, which is Oligwasi too, the sleeping one, because the bear sleeps all winter. But that's our healing animal. They dig the herbs and the plants. And in our family, we had an old story of an orphan boy who was taken in by a bear and came back as everybody else had gotten old. He was still young, but the 1 year he thought he'd spent in that cave, he learned all the different medicine plants. So you'll see in a lot of my silver work, I use the double curves, the fiddlehead fern design. I probably have that on some of these pieces here. Yeah, you see the little curves there around there. They become then plants. Inside them, the medicine plants, and the curves are the fiddlehead fern, which represents the beginning of spring, the new life coming up. And then they become canoes traveling around my silver work, carrying the medicine plants and the healing, the traditional healing, the midday way of thinking about the plants being connected to our lives and to our healing. So how I got into it was basically getting an apprenticeship in silver work, and they wouldn't let me do my traditional designs there. But after 4 years of learning silver, they released me by going out of business. And the last thing our company did was was to Pope John Paul's when he became Pope, and then Diane's wedding to the future king. So when Charles and Diana got married, we sent something off to them too. Then our company shut down. So I was told I was the last apprentice in North America for this tradition that came out from the Paul Revere tradition. But it's not just the Paul Revere tradition, it's also our people in our Indian reserves didn't know what to do with the silver because we were being given a lot of it because of the fur trade. But originally, we only worked copper because copper is special to our people. Copper is alive. If you, it's the color of the sky, the sun anyway, and the earth. It's reddish and sometimes yellowish when it's polished. And then you wet it and it gets green. That means it's got life, it's alive. So we always respected the copper. And so when I did some work at Cahokia Mounds with you guys, I got excited because you found a possible copper workshop there, and that the type of metalwork that the people of that you call it the Mississippian and Hopewellian cultures did in the past was repoussé. So the silver work that I do, repoussé just is French for raised up. So as you see, like on this bracelet from the back, you know, one side it's pushed out, the other side it's pushed in. The repoussé is the hammering it up from behind and detailing it that way. And that's the same thing that was done at Cahokia Mounds by the people there, because they had the repoussé raised up copper tablets. So in that tradition, you know, I got really excited and I started doing some Mississippian designs. Um, I've spent a fortune, I think, on old books that you guys sell for pictures of the different artworks and such, and found how it represents our way of thinking about the world, which is different than the European way. For instance, in the art of the Mississippians were featured the raccoon, and that's Asaban, and that's the trickster for us northeastern people. They talk about the coyote out west. We talk about Asaban is the trickster, and we have lots of stories about Asaban. And then you also have the turkey as being a symbol of chieftainship. So it's not only the eagle. The eagle to us is associated with the thunder beings. So I put those into my art too, but the turkey is important in there. And then you have the spider, and there's a lot of different versions of the traditions around the spider. But then you've got the thunder beings, as I mentioned, for the sky, and then under the earth and under the waters, you have the horned serpents. And those are in balance with the sky and the earth, because that's what creates when the thunders attack the horned serpents, you have the thunder and the lightning and the ozone that clears the air and everything. So we have all these traditions. And so throughout my artwork, you're liable to see any of these symbols. I sign them all with my symbol from my name. As I mentioned, my last name, Tamburro, which actually is not an Indian name, but it comes from Europe, but it just means drum. Tambor, just think of beating on me or whatever. And so you got the drum, and then the sunrise is for the Wabanaki, the Dawnland people. Waban means sort of like white. A lot of people don't realize, so I put that wampum is a white bead, and but it's always shell. But they miss the point that the shell is sparkles and is shiny. When you hold it up to the sun, you see in the shell, you see rainbows. And that's the same as like the story with the Quechua, the starfish coming down, because you've got the idea of sparkling all the time and the sparkling waters. And so I put shell wampum beads in a lot of my pieces. This piece here actually has bone hair pipes, the white bone, because when they're less expensive, but they also became popular as people moved west, because it was cheaper to make bone hair pipes and beads than it was to keep doing the shell. But our shell wampum beads, the white ones, were what is traditional. Some people call the purple, they call that wampum, but it isn't really. That's called siwani, or there's other words we have for it. They were shell also, but it's the white part of the shell that's the wampum. The purple part is the siwani. And so we would put those together again for balance. So you'll see in a lot of my artwork, I'll combine the dark and the light. So that's not necessarily a short answer to your question, but there's a lot of detail to it, and I keep trying to think of new things to do. I really want to get more into some of my wood carving and other kinds of things, but I've got right now a lot of silver orders, and the copper earrings that I do that you'll see on the website, they're the circle hoops, and they have the double curves, and I call those healing earrings, but I try to do most of those in copper. And I needed to explain why. It was because the silver for our people, like I said, wasn't considered the most healing metal. It was considered valuable because the Europeans, after all, valued it. So a lot of things people want silver in it, but the copper was of value to our people because it represented healing, because of the fact of it turning life. But I do coat it with Everbright and some other kinds of trademarked products. Just one coating. I do a light coating, so it won't look plasticky or anything, but copper does tarnish very fast. So I usually coat it so that it won't tarnish too fast and it'll maintain its shine.
So is it easier to work with the copper or with the silver?
One of the things I asked right away in my apprenticeship was, how come you make me work in only copper for a year? The answer was that copper and sterling silver work exactly the same. So if I have sheet copper, I use exactly the same tools. It takes me exactly the same amount of time. And it's the only difference between copper and sterling silver, which, by the way, sterling silver has a tiny bit of copper in it. Pure copper is too soft. But the only difference is finishing it. When you finish it off, like I say, copper often does tarnish in a different way than, which means oxidize or turn color in a different way than the sterling does. So I don't bother to coat the sterling because I use polishing cloths. I didn't bring one here to show you, but you only polish it with rouge cloth. Don't buy that chemical stuff at the store. Polish it with a cloth. And with the copper, you can do the same thing, but it just for some reason seems to tarnish faster. So I put the Everbright on it, and so it keeps the bright reddish glow to it. I guess as an example here, shiny. My silver, I don't have to worry about that. This is what I did a lot of that people don't tend to buy that aren't of native descent from the Northeast is these silver brooches. See, this is how our word in my tribe for silver is moni. So you can tell where it came from. And so when the silver coins were given to us historically, we hammered them out and made them into beautiful objects. Then I use little jeweler's saws and cut out turtles and sometimes got hummingbirds or, bears or hearts. And that everyone is different. We say they're like snowflakes. And so they again remind us of going to the spirit world. But the other reason to wear these traditional brooches is that it reminds us of what our ancestors went through too when we became refugees. For instance, the main Abenaki reserves are in Canada, Odanak and Wallanack and such, and then you get up further because they absorbed all the refugees coming from Massachusetts, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley and everything. Of course, we've got others of our people that went to Wisconsin, like the Stockbridge Muncie people, but we had to leave, and the way to pay for things was to wear silver. So when you have these pins that have a little flexible pin in them. You can take them off and you can buy your food and stuff. The Cherokee and the Shawnee and the Wyandot and other people who got removed from Ohio and Georgia and everything and forced over the Mississippi wore a lot of their silver this same way. So we still traditionally like to wear this silver to it also reflects back any bad feelings that may be going towards you if somebody's trying to hex you. And also so you can use it for your money, literally, to pay for things, or just look beautiful as a traditional person. If you're wearing one, traditional people from the Northeast, at least the old people, know that you're traditional. Although I made some things for a woman in her 50s not long ago, and she said, I'm not that old. Our generation doesn't wear these. So, but, the older generation sure liked them, and I'm trying to give them a contemporary expression with my artwork. So some people say, oh, are you copying things for reenactment or something? I said, no. As a matter of fact, the reenactors get mad at me when I discovered that there was such a thing called reenacting here in the Midwest. And I went to some and they said, I wasn't period correct. And I said, well, but they all love my stuff. They say, boy, those brooches are just real traditional. Who did you copy that of? I says, I don't. It's a contemporary expression of the old form of artwork. So that's the difference between, in my mind, of doing a craft versus an art. An art is ever changing, but you can build on the traditions of the past. So like the gorgets I do, those were mostly done by presidents and army officers as gifts to our ancestors to wear for signing a treaty or whatever. So I've taken those, and we still use the gorget design, the crescent moon design, but I've sort of taken the idea back by putting turtles on them. Then I do have that design with the figure 8 that some people have seen, because in Canada, I'm also Canadian, and I got 3 citizenships. My Abenaki citizenship first, United States and Canada. But in Canada, the people are known as Aboriginal or Indigenous, are Indian, Métis, and Inuit. The Métis are recognized in Canada as the blend of the 2 people. So I run into people that want that figure 8 design. It represents Europe coming together with North America. Ironically, I think in the United States, they didn't want to recognize the Métis, but most of our people are somewhat mixed anyway. And we certainly are in terms of language and tradition. But I'm sort of passionate about my own, trying to keep our own tribal languages alive. And the only way I can do that is if you go to my website, or even some of the descriptions that you posted for my art, you'll see that I use our traditional Indian words in there, like askasquegan for the word for green, for when I talk about the copper turning green, because our elders, I'm becoming an elder now. I'm a young elder. I'm not quite ready for this, but I'm realizing that the people younger than me, are of a generation that have never heard the language even being spoken by elders. And I just remember the beauty of the language so much when people spoke it. So I try to think, when I'm doing my artwork, I try to think of it as carrying the voices too. So when I do these plants and I work it, I'm thinking the indigenous language words that's going into it, because we say that's how we connect with our ancestral spirits, is through our languages. I mean, I'm also a scientist. I mean, I'm a linguist, and I know that it's mathematical and everything, but and that's what language is. And we don't speak the same language as people did 1,000 years ago exactly, but there's still a continuity, and that's what I think my art with. I'm not trying to do something that was. I'm trying to continue something on into the future. and that's why I do my art, not to make money. I have a PhD and I can teach, although no, I keep being told, well, we can't hire you. We don't have any Indians here, because my focus is Indigenous studies. But so I guess you could say, well, now that I'm retired, the only way I can make money is by doing my artwork. But it's not for that purpose. The purpose of my art was because it gave a physical expression. Now, on my non-Indian side, which was my dad was a boarding school kid and he was mixed native, but he also was from a Philadelphia or a Pennsylvania family that had a rich Frenchman marry in, and he was a French guy who ended up the head designer for Tiffany Studios. So he did bronze medallions and he did all kinds of stained glass and everything. So beadwork was fatal for me. I mean, stained glass artist plus my other grandmother doing beadwork. So beadwork sells okay, but it's there's a lot of people doing that. So why I focus on the silver and the copper more than wood carving, stone carving, beadwork, or quill work is I've noticed you have other artists who are doing those things and very good artists at it. But the reprise, there's very few people who actually do that. So I'm trying to keep that tradition alive. And that makes me feel connected to what you're doing at Cahokia, because I can feel the ancestors there having done that reprise there in the copper. So maybe I've gotten really fanatical about copper, and why I keep talking about it is I've had some people say, why don't you do that in silver? And that's my answer. It's a connect. The price difference isn't that much. You know, they say, would it be a lot more expensive if you do it in silver? I says, it might add 20 or 30 bucks to it, but the work is the same. So, you know, it's if you have a $150 piece, you know, in silver, maybe I'd charge 180 for it or something like that. But the silver really isn't that much more expensive. And it's all about what you want to represent. So today I decided to wear a bear on here. See, a bear with on copper because, like I say, my relatives are the bear, the Wasos. Wasos, by the way, in my language means the wandering one. We also can say Mukwa or Moskwa, which means sort of the black thing, or we can say Muin, which means the berry eater. People argue about language and say, oh, well, you speak a different language because your word for this is that. We didn't have singular words for anything. They were descriptive. So I also used the other term I used was the sleeping one. So we have different words that we can use for our animals. And why I'm talking about that is when I'm doing my artwork, when I'm talking to it in a sense in my mind, sometimes out loud, startle my wife. She's get worried about me. I'm getting older, you know. And I'll say those words, you know, from the ancestors and put them into the artwork.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us. It's been about 30 minutes now, so I think we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So it's been very, very interesting listening to you and learning more about your culture and your artwork and why it's important to you.
Well, that beats the alternative. No, I'm joking. But I'll just say in my language, Uli Bamgani, which means travel well.
Thank you.
They say we don't say goodbye. They say adio, but that came from adieu in French. But so we just say Uli Bamgani. Have good travels.
Well, thank you. You too.
Okay.
Bye.